Good evening. Tonight is the January 18th, 2024 meeting of the City of Des Moines Plan and Zoning Commission. I do want everyone to know that the city is monitoring the weather, and if conditions worsen, we might have to suspend items to the February 1st meeting. But for right now, we're going to go ahead and see how far we can get. The Plan and Zoning Commission is generally an advisory body to the City Council. The City Council will hold a public hearing and make the final decision on all matters before the Commission other than site plans and subdivision plats, unless denials or conditional approvals thereof are appealed. Please contact the City Clerk or Development Services Department staff for details on council hearings. Applicant will be given 10 minutes to present the request. Proponents and then opponents from the public are then allowed to speak in that order, with each speaker allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. Applicant is then allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal. The hearing will then be closed and the Commission will discuss and vote on the issue. All comments are to be germane to the item under consideration, and speakers are to maintain a courteous manner. Items listed on the consent portion of the agenda will not be individually discussed and will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report, unless an individual present or member of the Commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately under the public hearing agenda. I get a motion from a commissioner to approve the December 21st minutes of the Plan and Zoning Commission.
So moved.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Those who pass? Okay, thank you. Oh, is Will Page on the line?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, how do you vote on the minutes, Will?
I vote to approve.
Okay, thank you.
Hey everyone, it's Justin. I'm on the line now as well.
Okay. Item number 1 on the... Oh, I'm sorry. Is that Justin?
Yep, it's me.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't hear you very well. How do you vote on the minutes?
I'm going to stay on that one because I didn't get to hear the first part of it.
Did you catch that?
Justin, did you say you pass on the minutes?
Yes, pass.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, I will now read through the items on the consent agenda. Item number 1 is a request from the City of Des Moines for the following regarding property located in the vicinity of 3500 Vandalia Avenue. Determination as to whether the requested rezoning is in conformance with Plan DSM, to amend Plan DSM to revise the future land use classification of the property from business park to industrial, and to rezone the approximately 8.36 acres of property from EX Mixed Use District to I2 Industrial District, to allow the development of a vehicle storage, maintenance, and operation facility for the Des Moines Area Regional Transit Authority. Is there anyone in the audience tonight who would like this removed from the consent agenda and heard in the public hearing? Okay, seeing none, are there any commissioners who would like this heard in the public hearing tonight? Okay, item 1 will remain on the consent agenda. Item number 2 is a request from Elam Christian Fellowship of Des Moines for the following regarding property located at 525 East 9th Street. Determination as to whether the requested rezoning is in conformance with the Plan DSM, to amend Plan DSM, to revise the future land use classification of the property from public semi-public to downtown mixed use, and to rezone the property from P2 Public Civic and Institutional District to DXR Downtown District, to allow renovation of an existing church building for a school and multiple household residential use. Is there anyone in the audience tonight who would like this removed from the consent agenda and heard in the public hearing? Seeing none, is there anyone on the commission who would like this heard in the public hearing? Okay, item number 2 will remain on the consent agenda. Item number 3 is a request from Moines Auto Repair, LLC, for the following regarding property at 1660 East Army Post Road. determination as to whether the requested rezoning is in conformance with Plan DSM, to amend Plan DSM to revise the future land use classification of the property from business park within a regional node to community mixed use within a regional node, and to rezone the property from EX mixed use district to CX mixed use district to allow the construction of a new auto body repair shop. Is there anyone in the audience tonight who would like this removed from the consent agenda and heard in the public hearing? Okay, seeing none, are there any commissioners who would like this heard in the public hearing tonight? Okay, seeing none, item number 3 will remain on the consent agenda. Item number 4 is a request from James McCaughey, Hawkeye Land Company, for review and approval of a public hearing site plan RW Excavating Solutions for property located in the vicinity of 2142 East Market Street, and for a Type 2 design alternative to allow accessory buildings to reach 30 feet in height when the maximum height for accessory structures is 17 feet per city code. Is there anyone in the audience tonight who would like this removed from the consent agenda and heard in the public hearing? Okay, seeing none, are there any commissioners who would like this heard in the public hearing tonight? Okay. Item number 4 will remain on the consent agenda. Item number 5 is a request from Fireworks Leasing LLC for review and approval of a public hearing site plan amendment, Jake's Fireworks, for property located at 2221 East Euclid Avenue, and for a Type 2 design alternative to allow outdoor storage in the front and street side yards, where outdoor storage shall be located in the rear or interior side yards per city code. Is there anyone in the audience tonight who would like this removed from consent and heard in the public hearing? Okay. I'm also going to ask commissioners, we did receive notice today that yes? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, we received notice that the neighborhood association is against this item. I am apt to pull this and hear it in the public hearing just so that we can make sure that we hear commissioners' viewpoints on this. So I'm actually going to pull this item.
Well, I was going to say, I'd pull it if you want someone else to do it, because I
Okay.
saw the comment, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 5 will be heard in the public hearing tonight. Item number 6 is also on the consent agenda, a request from IA9 Des Moines LLC for the following regarding 3 parcels located in the vicinity of 1475 Hart Avenue. Determination as to whether the requested rezoning is in conformance with Plan DSM, to amend Plan DSM to revise the future land use classification of the property from low-density residential within a neighborhood node to business park within a neighborhood node, and to rezone the property from N1A neighborhood district to limited EX mixed-use district to allow the development of self-storage and/or flex warehouse buildings where no individual storage unit shall be less than 600 square feet. Is there anyone in the audience tonight who would like this pulled from the consent agenda and heard in the public hearing? Okay, seeing none, are there any commissioners who would like item number 6 removed from the consent agenda and heard in public hearing? Okay, seeing none, item number 6 will remain on the consent agenda. So items on consent tonight are items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. Can I get a motion from a commissioner to approve the consent agenda? Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your right hand.
Motion carried, or well.
Well, I was going to check with Will and Justin. Yeah. Will, how do you vote on the consent agenda? See, did we lose him?
This is Justin, but I vote yes.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Justin's a yes. And I believe we have 2 abstentions. Andy?
Abstaining from item 2.
And then Todd? Okay. And you consent to the others? Okay, thank you very much. If there was anyone here tonight for items that were on the consent agenda, you are welcome to leave now and hit the roads a little bit early. We will begin with item number 5, and Nick from staff will present.
Is this on? There we go. Sorry. All right, Madam Chair, members of the commission, Nick Tarpey, planning staff. The site plan that we'll be looking at tonight, and we'll walk through a little bit, but I just want to clarify at the outset, we have an approved site plan back from 2021. This was a conversion of a former Quick Trip gas station into a retail location that sells fireworks. Some people are familiar, in Iowa we have really unique laws around the sale of fireworks. They're only legal 5 months out of the year. So 5 weeks out of the year, excuse me, from June 1st through July 8th. So during that time is when this store is actively selling fireworks as a retail location. Otherwise, there's not really any business activities going on there. So that kind of underlies, I guess, this request tonight. We'll take a look at the site plan and I'll explain that a little bit more, but just wanted to clarify that at the outset. And so we have this approved site plan back from 2021, and tonight the applicant has come with an amendment to allow limited quantities of outdoor storage. That's specifically what we're looking at tonight. It's not a zoning issue at all. Outdoor storage is allowed by right in the zoning district. It's a site plan amendment to allow limited quantities of outdoor storage on the site. So here's an aerial of the site. This is taken last year. You can see there's the existing building here that's in the rear of the site. That will come into play. And then you'll see that they have made some site improvements compared to maybe a typical parking lot that you might see in other areas of the city. So they've got these islands that they've added that are code compliant. They've got trees in them, and there is a landscape buffer here. We'll take a look at some photos where you'll be able to see that a little bit more, but did want to point that out on the aerial. Thinking about the context of this area, everything directly to the east here, if you can follow my cursor, this is the Euclid and 235 interchange. So north is basically heading out of the city, and then everything to the west here is the Euclid Industrial Corridor. So this is a pretty industrial area with a lot of intensive industrial uses, fabrication, outdoor storage, and the like. So thinking about the context really informed the staff recommendation here as well. I'll zoom out here, but we do have some photos of the outdoor storage. So this is not like your typical outdoor storage that we see a lot. It's really outdoor storage of materials, and specifically these concrete blocks specifically. So this is a fireworks business, like I said at the outset. That business is operating out of here as a retail store for 5 weeks out of the year, from early June through early July. During that time, they have this retail store, but they also, as you may know, fireworks are allowed to be sold in kind of a pop-up fashion in the summer in parking lots, and they use these concrete blocks at those pop-up, temporary, outdoor kind of locations 5 weeks out of the year. Other times, they need a place to store those. And so what the applicant has decided is they have decided to store them at this site. And the reasons for that are, one, it's very centrally located to all their operations. Two, the concrete blocks would sit on this 8-inch reinforced, pretty freshly paved concrete parking lot. And then three, there's ample space for that here. And also just thinking about the industrial context and the industrial setting, it makes sense, maybe compared to some of the other sites that they might have. So this is just a photo of what that looks like. Right now, and per the recommendations in the staff report, this type of concrete block storage would be restricted to 3 specific locations on the site. And this is one of them that we're looking at right now. So here's another view. So this is standing basically from the front of the building, looking towards the northeast. The backdrop is that Euclid 235 interchange. And then here's another view of another area that's in the, I guess, a southeastern corner of the site. So again, that's what they will look like. That's what they do look like. So digging into the actual site plan, just so you can conceptualize this a little bit more. So again, we got the building that's placed in the rear of the site, Euclid Ave here. We got the on-ramp onto 235 South, if you follow my cursor here. And then these highlighted areas are the 3 areas that they have asked to store these blocks. This area here, in the southwest corner of the site, this is a completely legal and compliant storage location because it sits in an interior side or rear yard. And so this is compliant. They don't need any relief for the storage in this particular spot. These two squares or rectangles here, these two storage locations, they're in a front yard. So that's why the outdoor storage needs relief, because outdoor storage is only permitted in a rear or an interior side yard. You can see with the location of the building that's basically pushed to the back of the property, a lot of the site is front yard, and so they do have some limited areas to store these blocks. So that's really the crux or the nexus or the reason for that relief, is that they are storing a couple of these pads or pods of concrete blocks in a front yard. So that's the reason they're here tonight. As you can see, this is the landscape plan from the previous site plan approval in 2021. They've got the parking lot plantings that are required. They've got this parking lot buffer screening out here. They have proposed to beef up and add additional screening in this area to shield the blocks from Euclid. And then just want to dig into the staff recommendation. As staff, we are supportive of the request for some of the reasons that I described. And I just want to also reiterate a couple of the conditions here. So the outdoor storage would only be limited or restricted to those concrete blocks. So we would not allow other materials, vehicles, parts, trailers, anything like that. It would strictly be those bulk concrete blocks. Another condition is, I know it's relatively vague, but there is a condition in there to keep the blocks neatly stacked and organized. I know that's subjective and maybe subject to interpretation, but they would be subject to the zoning condition on their site plan. If somebody could request an inspection if they became in disarray or if the area got expanded outside. And so that is a condition of the approval that the commission would be granting tonight. And then also just thinking about screening. So I talked about that additional screening that they wanted to provide on the northern part of the property. That would be subject to further staff level review after this meeting. So thinking about all of those things, thinking about the context, thinking about really a lot of the storage is really on an on-ramp to 235. There's some grade change that's there. The site is already zoned for outdoor storage. And then also the concrete blocks that they're showing, I think colloquially a lot of times they're called what people call bin blocks. And that is actually what is identified as an outdoor screening material for a lot of our other industrial sites in the city. So if people have aggregate or sand or other types of loose materials, a lot of times we actually, at our staff, we will instruct people to store them in those kinds of bin block shelters. And so that, in a lot of other sites around the city, is an acceptable form of outdoor storage screening. And so our staff felt the placement of those on the property was appropriate for a site that's already zoned I-1, which allows for outdoor storage by right. As the chair mentioned, we did hear from the neighborhood. We did get this letter from the desk of the neighborhood president. And so I will zoom in on this, and we can all read it together. And to my knowledge, this was the summary of the comments we received. We did not hear about anybody else that had any objections. So that's my presentation. I'll take any questions if you have any.
Hey, Nick, did they see these actual blocks? Did they see pictures of them? Because when I read it, it was like concrete blocks, and I'm thinking of those, square, awful-looking.
The neighborhood you're asking?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't know if they have.
Yeah.
Good question.
It appears
Because it
that they're
informed
already.
my opinion.
It appears that they're already there. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So I would assume that the neighborhood
I know that
maybe
Jillian
driven
had
by it. No.
Yeah, and Jillian on our staff had a long conversation with Jeff, and I think she at least attempted to describe the circumstance. I don't know whether or not she emailed pictures or anything like that, but we did try to convey to him what they were.
Johnny, did you have a
Yeah, my question was along the same lines, but do the neighbors know that these are the staff recommendations?
I at least know the person that sent the letter in was made aware of the staff recommendation and the specific conditions here. So that was made aware to that person that sent the comment in.
Yes, Chris.
Nick,
Go ahead, Will.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's Will Page speaking. Hey, Nick, I'm looking at the plan that the company submitted, and I can see the 3 spots that they have indicated with black lines. And my question, well, I have a couple of questions. One question is this. These black lines are supposed to be showing perimeters of some kind or another, but I don't see measurements in them. Am I correct or am I wrong?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
He wants to know if the black boxes that indicate where the blocks will be, if there are measurements for them.
I don't know.
But
Maybe.
the drawing is to scale, so even if they don't have them identified clearly, it's a scalable drawing, so it is a defined boundary.
Nick?
So that is something that there is a number there that we have for inspection if it were to incur. And I ask the question because when a situation like this, it's not uncommon for incremental increase. That is not unusual at all, and that's a concern. Now, if you're saying that the dimensions are in scale, that makes okay, I guess, for me. However, I'm thinking about in terms of height and height restrictions. I don't see anything about that at all. And that's another dimension that I think is important for this. We see in the picture, 3 or 4 or 5 rows, whatever they were, but I don't see any kind of height restriction. Comment on that, please.
So our staff recommendation did not, I guess, as you can see, we did not list a condition or restriction on height. I don't know if the applicant would potentially be open to that. They're here, and they can speak to that. I do know our outdoor storage regulations as they exist now, any outdoor storage areas are not allowed to be taller than any perimeter screening. So if they would have a 6-foot tall fence, you couldn't have outdoor storage that's 7 feet tall, et cetera.
Nick, could you just go to the picture that shows them that as they exist? I mean, I think that can give us a flavor of what they're doing, and then we can have the applicant come up. So it looks like three high.
So in this instance, they're not, well, I guess there's sort of a fence close by to a couple of those. So is it that fence height that would be applicable, or I know that there was some trees or bushes that were being planted to screen.
Yeah, I can show
Are those considered
But,
height?
and I think it goes a little bit to the last condition where we still have some work to do with them. But I think there's value, and let's have the applicant come up. But I do think maybe limiting them to 3, the stack of 3 as they have, so we wouldn't get taller than that. That looks pretty reasonable to me. I probably going forward be a little bit of a concern. But if the commission felt 2, I mean, we can ask the applicant. Of course, they need a certain amount of volume.
Are there any other questions from commissioners?
I was curious, but you mentioned that the item in the southwest was already fine, but the other 2 are not. So
Yeah.
we're assuming that it's a side area that's allowed because it's further back from the front face
Correct.
of the building?
Exactly. Yes. So this is a permitted location because it's behind this building face. So it would be considered an interior side yard here. And so it would be permitted there. Everything in front of this front facade of this building is a front yard. And so this and this are both in the front yard, and it's not permitted there, per the outdoor storage regulations.
If the building was all the way to the front, would they be permitted?
Yes, they would.
And then you mentioned that this is already a screening material. If they screen the screening
Correct.
material,
Like if they
screening
would have had
material,
a pile of sand or something like that, that we would, as per our regulations, like a loose material, it would be required to be in one of these, like a 3-sided bin block structure. And typically people use a concrete block about that size.
So if they just reorient the blocks into a line, would they not be screening the material with the screen?
So like if they stretch these out,
I
Looking at
think
the
you can
screen?
make that argument. And
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason why, as staff, we're recommending approval.
I'm just saying they seem like they're pre-screened.
sure.
Johnny, did you have a question?
This is across the street from the Restore
Correct.
which has a bunch of outdoor materials on their front yard. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Nick. Is the applicant here tonight? You may come forward. You have 10 minutes. Please state your name and address.
Good evening, Commissioners. Melissa Hills. I'm with Civil Engineering Consultants. I'm the engineer on this project. To address your question on the height of the storage, those blocks are 2 by 2 by 4, and so you can see in the picture that they've got those stacked 3 high, so they're exactly 6 feet with 3 blocks stacked. And you can see they've got those stacked very neatly, so they're stacked as if they were a screen. So we feel like we're being as compliant as we can be and making it look as good as it can. So
I have a question. As Will mentioned earlier, there tends to be a creep of having the material go a little beyond what the parameters are over time. Have you maxed out what's there? Is there, I know you're a civil engineer, right? So I don't know if you can answer this question.
I'm not sure if I can answer that. I do know that the blocks that you're seeing in these photos are everything that they currently have. And these blocks are used they generally set up their tents in Walmart parking lots. And so these blocks are distributed around to those sites during their times of operation and selling the fireworks.
Okay. I'm just thinking whether or not if they have more tents at more Walmarts, if they're going to need more storage, and whether if they've already maxed out what's available. It looks like there might be a spot for one more block. I can't exactly tell with the photo, but just sort of how that process is going to go.
I think there is a little bit more room in that area that where they actually have permitted storage over by their trash enclosure. If you go back to the site plan screen, I think there is some additional area that they aren't using in that corner where it is allowed. They don't have that area full, so and I think there's room to expand if they had to, but I think the materials that they have on site is everything that they currently have and need for their operations. So.
And I noticed in the staff report that one reason that this site was chosen for this is because of how much weight the pavement can hold.
Correct.
So is there a determination of, like, I guess the 3 blocks high is?
Yeah, I did run this by our structural engineer in-house, and he did some calcs, and we are okay
within
with
the limits.
The weight on the.
Okay. Any more questions from commissioners? Will or Justin, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I have a question. Would the applicant be amenable in terms of the height to restrict the height of the 3 blocks? It's not mentioned any place, and interesting what your question about the ability of the surface to handle this, but I'm thinking about visibility, and I'm thinking about the possibility that if we don't restrict the height, who knows what.
To address that, I've spoken to my client about this, and they are perfectly fine with the 6-foot max stacking height, and I think that's what code would require for screening anyway. So they've already talked with staff, and they're in total agreement with that. So if you wanted to add that as a condition, a 6-foot height requirement, we're okay with that.
Isn't the fence already
Thanks.
6 foot though, so it's already, isn't that the driving requirement already? We don't
Correct.
really need another requirement, do we? We're already at 6.
Right.
Yeah, it never hurts to have it spelled out too. I mean, I think we all know that we're not, 6 is going to be what it's going to be, but if the commission would feel more comfortable, I don't as staff, I think that'd be fine to add it if you are inclined to.
I'm curious about the question earlier about the number of blocks per space relative to the concrete. Is there a safety issue? Is there something else there that is, like, why is the concrete's damage underneath the blocks matter to us at the moment?
I think it's just more a durability perspective and like outdoor storage in general. Our engineering staff, I'm planner, not engineer, but we do want our sites to be constructed in a manner that they can handle the use that they're going to receive and be appropriately maintained. So in this case, we are dealing with a paved surface, so I think we'd want to know that the pavement should be able to hold this and look good over time, and not get beat up after one season and that sort of thing. But we never had a concern about the pavement. I mean, I think that's just been a question that's been raised here. I think the applicant's comfortable, we're comfortable as staff, that we have what we need here from that.
I just noticed it in the staff report, and I considered, it sounds like we're good with the 6-foot height, but I was just considering if things were stacked higher, there would obviously be more weight per square foot
Sure.
on the concrete, so,
Yeah.
okay.
I'd like to make a motion to,
Oh,
if we're done with our discussions.
well, I haven't closed the public hearing
All
yet,
right.
so when we get there, get right to you. Okay, if there's no more questions for the applicant, great, if you can.
I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. If you can put your name and address on that white sheet right there. Is there anyone in the audience who is in favor of this item and would like to speak? Okay. Is there anyone who is opposed to this item and would like to speak? Anyone neutral? Okay. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and open it up to the commission for amendments, motions, discussion.
Well, I can make an amendment and we can have 2 conditions. And those 2 conditions could be limit the stack to 3 blocks high or 6 feet high, and limit the definable boundary to what it shows on the scalable plans. Does that sound reasonable? If so, any questions on that? Otherwise, I'll make the motion.
I guess I would prefer, if we're actually going to have it, if we're serious about 6 feet, we may as well make it 6 feet. I mean, because all of a sudden they come in with, 3 rows of 4 feet high, what do you do?
Sure,
I mean,
that's
what is the-
acceptable.
I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding what the actual auditable
Right.
target we're trying to make is.
If they change their block size or something.
Can we go to the slide with the staff rec? And I heard Rick say 6 feet or 3 stacks, so
4.
I wrote 6 feet, so.
Okay.
And we get into the slide with the staff rec.
Well, but isn't the, well, no,
No.
this is, can we look at that for a quick second? Because is the rule that they have to be right now below that fence that's behind them? So is there actually
Well,
legally
chain
room
link
there?
isn't typically considered as screen
Screening
material,
material.
but I would like to just, I like the idea of 6 feet, and if they do different block sizes, we all know what we're leaving with. I think that's a great comment. If you maybe go to the staff rec slide, and then Rick can finish up what he was.
Okay. So, again, just to double check, everybody's in agreement there. My motion would be to approve staff with the condition, 1, to limit the stack to no more than 6 feet tall, and limit the definable boundary to what is shown on the scalable plans.
I feel real pedantic here, but should we give them a couple of inches? Like 6, 2 3/4, or
Well,
7/8?
I think you just have to leave it to us when we, on an enforcement, we're not going to go out there and measure it. If it's like 6 foot 1 inch, be like, get it out of here. I mean, there's some common sense to, so I think you're okay just saying 6 feet. I mean, if you want to say approximate, that's fine, but, okay.
Okay. I think we're good. I think
Thank you.
we've got it. Okay, if there's no further discussion,
Well, I guess,
Oh.
last one, screening materials. If you put slats in the chain link fence, are they screened? Or do we need to screen screening materials? What do we mean by screening?
I think that staff and the applicant were working on some landscaping solutions. We don't typically allow slats in chain link in general as screening. We don't have, I don't think 4 is intended that we think this needs to be like heavily screened. I believe there were some ongoing conversations about maybe some plant material that could just kind of soften some stuff. I think we're working together with the applicant, so I don't think it's anything drastic. So if you go with that condition, just know we don't have unrealistic expectations for the applicant. It's based off of a conversation that's already occurred.
okay. All right, there is a motion. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Will, how do you vote?
I vote no.
Okay. Justin, how do you vote?
No as well.
Okay.
Motion carries.
All right, we are moving on to item number 7. A request from Clayton Enterprises regarding property at 1726 Oakland Avenue to amend Plan DSM to revise the future land use designation from low-medium density residential to high-density residential to allow the addition of 3 additional dwelling units for a net density greater than 17 dwelling units per acre. And Catherine from staff is here to present.
Chair, members of the commission, Catherine Dreyhaus, planner for the city of Des Moines. As mentioned, the property is located at 1726 Oakland Avenue. This is in the River Bend neighborhood. The applicant is looking to increase density of the pre-existing multi-household dwelling from 6 units to 9 units. They would be adding 3 units to the basement if approved. Just the general site location, it's on the west side of Oakland Avenue between Franklin and, my internal map just failed. I can't remember what's on the south side at this point. And then I did pull up a really quick map of the land use map for the area, and it's a little hard to see, so where my cursor is located, it's a little brighter yellow versus the other yellow. And this is the subject property, just so you have an idea that it is located in the middle of a low-medium density residential designation. Some site photos from May. We can all dream about greener grass. And then I'm going to zoom in on the narrative provided by the applicant. General summary is that they have found that the project will be cost prohibitive, and that is why they are asking for the additional dwelling units to make the project financially feasible for them. When staff was reviewing this, we looked at the existing density that's been allowed. In 2016, a new land use map was adopted by the city, and at that time, the low-medium density residential designation was applied to this property. However, this would be considered a legal nonconforming designation as the pre-existing 6 units on 0.342 acre of land represents a net density of 18 dwelling units, which means it would technically already be high density residential. It would be greater than what's technically allowed within the low medium density residential. So it is a legal non-conforming designation. so to speak. Because of that, as well as the fact that this was built in the 1950s, I believe. I believe I wrote the date, but maybe I forgot to. I'm sorry, I believe this was built in the 1950s. Generally, at the time that buildings were, during this time when buildings were built as multi-household uses, basement would not be utilized as dwelling units. So this is not typical either for the style of building that it is or for the neighborhood that it's in. So looking at both that higher than allowed legal non-conforming density and looking at the style of architecture and the general use within the neighborhood, staff is recommending denial of the request for the higher density. And then next up, we do have a consent map. I will note, though, that city ordinance does not require that public notice be sent to properties, individual properties in what we typically call the impacted zone for a land use amendment. So postcards were not sent out to the surrounding neighbors, and so as a result, we did not receive comment back. Comment does go to all neighborhood associations, as well as very specific comment goes to the neighborhood association that the subject property is within. So that's why you do not see any responses on this consent map. And then I think that wraps everything up. So if you have questions for staff, I'd be happy to answer those.
Catherine, is this building occupied at this time?
This building is not occupied at this time. It was damaged by fire. It has a vacant monitor on it. I believe the applicant has been working on it for some time and has recently gone before the Historic Preservation Commission to get some of the work that they're going to be doing approved, since this is in a local historic district. I unfortunately was not able to make it out with the recent weather to get updated site photos. So,
Any more questions for staff? Yes, Andy?
Did the Historic Preservation Commission consider the additional 3 units?
they were not part of the request at the time that it was before the HPC, so they are not aware of that, and nor was it discussed.
And the other thing too is, even if they're aware, that commission is reviewing modifications, so if it was all done, all internal work, it wouldn't be purview, they would have no purview over it.
Is a comment with respect to the, is a comment with respect to the 1950s and 1980s indicating that it's just that we didn't usually use the basement, or is there some reason the use of the basement be unsafe?
We wouldn't have normally seen basements at that time in residential units, as even multi-household residential units being utilized as dwelling units. Typically, those areas were saved as service areas for storage, laundry, other residential uses that were not for living or habitation. So,
I think the comment is just really trying to identify what's typical character in the area. And so that's why that was in the analysis. But the biggest thing is just looking at the density, the future land use map, the designation for the area. As Catherine noted, they already exceed density-wise would be affiliated with a low-medium density designation. And staff is recommending denial of it, not thinking that this is the right spot. It's mid-block, for example. We had a request not too far away from here not too long ago that got a lot of discussion. It was a corner lot. I would say this lot is even less desirable for additional density from that perspective. So.
Any further questions for staff? Okay. Thank you very much, Catherine. Is the applicant here this evening to present? You would state your names, address when you speak, and you have 10 minutes to present.
My name is Robert Ritma.
I'm with Hildreth Construction Services. I was brought on as a general contractor to help with this project moving forward. And speaking on the historic nature of the project, trying to take into consideration the neighborhood association, putting the historic elements back into the building is what's driven up the cost of the construction, and which is what's brought Clinton in to discuss the financial stability of that project, of that building rather, that as we started to analyze the 6 units with low-income housing in that neighborhood, they weren't able to make it work. And so that's when we started looking into the 3 additional units in the basement, and that's when the numbers started to make sense. And so I'll let you guys talk further from there.
Yeah, so this building, I think, is, Clinton Ackerberg. Yeah, thank you guys for opening this up for discussion. So this, this building has kind of been marred with some challenges. Mike Clayton, friend and client of mine, here kind of helping to represent him and his interest on this project. It, was challenged with a contractor that really kind of dropped the ball on a lot of things. Mike has sunk a couple $100,000, unfortunately, already into this property. I think COVID had a negative impact, and we worked through some challenges with an architect, and we brought Matt on. Yeah, and so he wasn't getting anything done. So it's just a myriad of issues. He actually passed away about a couple weeks ago. So it's taken us a little while to kind of build a team for Mike to help get this done. He owns a lot of property in the city of Des Moines, but this is his first, I would say, big construction project, and it's just a little ahead of his skis with the team that he had formed. So I know it's been a challenging property. Where he's at now with it, having already sunk about $225,000 into this, and his contractor had started moving forward with 9 units without the proper approach and process, and being in front of this board and getting approval, which he thought he had. Long story. So at this point, we're analyzing the 6 units in this property, and it is nowhere close with the historic nature, the work that needs to go into the exterior of it, the interior, to get it up to speed. It's just not really financially viable to continue with the 6 units at this time. With 9 units, I think the original hope was to do the 6, come back for the 9, and that's also not really financially viable. So the hope is to revitalize this property, make it really beautiful. Hildreth is a really well-known contractor in town who does great work. They've been hired to basically turn this property around and have it be a really contributing historic property for the city and for that neighborhood. And 9 units would make that viable to do. 6 is a challenge, and unlikely if it would move forward if we can't do the 6, in which case the building will just get demolished by the city, and I don't envision much happening on that lot once that occurs. So it's kind of a challenge in that regard. Do you have anything to add, Matt?
The only one thing. Matt Balin, Cambridge, Iowa. We have submitted the plans with the required egress windows to the Historic Commission for approval. So the egress windows that would go around the outside at the ground, the egress windows that would be at the ground level for the basement are approved by the Historic Commission. That has been submitted already. So.
I think it's probably important for us to address the 2 issues that were kind of brought forth by the city. Chris, I think you asked a good question about was it just not common, or is there a reason that it wouldn't make sense to finish 3 basement units? And I heard that it just wasn't common for that era. but I didn't really necessarily hear anything that there was a reason that that wouldn't work. It's got the appropriate ceiling heights.
The trigger, I think, is the sprinkler system. So, yeah, so I guess included in the budget then is the sprinkler system, and going to 9 units triggers the sprinkler system requirement for all the units.
And then I think the other question at hand was density. A little outside of my wheelhouse, but is that something that you want to speak to at all on the density side, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's apartments in that neighborhood just to the west that have 9 units. This is on a residential street, obviously, but I think you go 1 block or 2 blocks to the west, and there's apartments in that neighborhood. So.
Isn't it the next, if you go across the street from this block to the north?
Sorry, can you speak into the microphone? We can't hear.
I don't know if so I think across the street from this block to the north, there's like a 24-plex. Or is it 2 blocks north?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of high density around the area, but perhaps maybe not so much on this street. I think at the end of the street, there's a high density. But at any rate, so one other thing that I think is probably just important for the city and for the neighborhood, this property has been in a blight scenario since the fire occurred, which I think was 2019. It's, revenue for the city, a nice, finished building up to code with the Historic Commission. I think all of that's really good for the neighborhood, for the street, for everyone around it, for the city, for tax revenue. And it's just going to be a really, really tough challenge if it's limited to the 6, just to even make it happen. Mike just might kind of walk away from this, which I just would hate to see for everyone's sake. Yes, sir.
Is the building eligible for, and have you applied for historic tax credits?
That's a great question. I spoke with Mike about that. I think with the neighborhood inspection division, the timeline just wouldn't be doable at this point in time. They really want to see something happen with this. And it's a little, that's within your wheelhouse. Mike's never done anything like that before. That would have been a great thing to pursue out of the gate. But I feel like we don't have enough time to necessarily go down that road to appease the neighborhood.
Well, I thank you for that reply, but the state and federal historic tax credits would offset a large part of the expenses that you're about to incur on the redevelopment, which might make it more feasible to consider the 6 instead of the 9. In fact, it might be the only way you could do the 6 instead of the 9.
Yeah, that's a good observation. I think you're spot on. I would say if we could not get approval for the 9, then I think that would be a really good alternative. And then I think we would have an uphill battle with the historical society, historical commission, and then also the neighborhood, Dalton, with what department is Dalton? Neighborhood inspection. He wants this thing demolished, and so I think time is of the essence to get something done. But I think that would be a great approach if we can get some leniency on the time. If we can't get approved for 9, then I think that would be a good approach if we can get some leniency on the timeline for it. I think that's a good point.
One thing I'll just clarify there is that you don't have to have your tax credits approved or in hand before you move forward with the project. Mm-hmm. If you have some reasonable expectation, which Hildreth would be able to provide, that you're doing the work in accordance with the standards, there's no reason to wait, so the timeline might not be as critical as you think it is.
There's one other caveat to that. It would probably have to change ownership hands for that to occur.
The other thing, too, I was thinking this was non-contributing. I was just scrolling through the nomination. It is a non-contributing structure, so somebody would have to go through the process of, So, I mean, it's possible. I mean, and this nomination was, prepared by Will Page probably like 20 years ago. So it's, a lot of time has changed, but at this point, it is noted as non-contributing.
This property is only just over 3/10 of an acre. Is there enough space to accommodate parking for 9 units? I don't know what they would be required to have.
Yes, I think so.
Sorry, again, can you speak into the
Yes.
microphone? Okay.
Well, the code would generally be, it's one per unit. So you'd have to find, the parking lot probably need to be bigger than what it generally is today.
The
but-
code requires off-street
can we-
parking for all 9 units? Is that correct?
Yeah, unless relief would be granted. But if we go to the aerial, so look at 1802 to the north, that contains 8 units. You can see the size of that property as comparison to this one, which is proposed to go to 9.
That was actually one of my questions. So directly to the north is an 8-unit property, is that right?
Yes, there's a parcel in between. I'd have to see who actually owns that, but yeah, development-wise. Yep, that's owned in common, 1730s owned in common with 1802.
So we have 8 units directly to the north. The sprinkler system, do you need sprinklers at 6?
No, from my understanding is with increased density is when we would need to put sprinklers in, so going from 6 to 9.
If you go to 8, do you need sprinklers?
I believe so.
Yes, Johnny?
Am I understanding correctly that this project is being pushed by neighborhood inspections, violations, and whatnot?
Correct.
Okay. So when was the last time this building was actually occupied?
I believe it was 2019 when the fire occurred.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It is a public nuisance. There's actually, it's already been cleared through the courts to tear it down. The applicant was given a last reprieve to try to make something happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I tried to speak to that just a little bit. COVID didn't help anything, but that was not the main issue, I don't believe. It was just a team that Mike was relying on to get things done, and that was not a good team to accomplish anything. I think I mentioned the architect on it was incapable of complying with city requirements, and he was ill, come to find out, and just recently passed away. And then the contractor, I think it was just way above his head on this project, and had convinced Mike that he could handle it, and it just wasn't feasible. So I don't think it was really Mike's fault per se for why it took so long, but it was the team that he had kind of assembled, which is why he came to me to help with this. And so we're kind of trying to work through just to have a good outcome for everybody.
What's your definition of viable? You mentioned viable often. What does viable mean for you?
With regard to the financials of the property,
You said, hey, right now, it won't work.
with the 6,
Yep, said 6 won't work, 9 might work, maybe we got these other things. How are you defining viable? You used viable a lot. I just don't know what you're using as your threshold for saying, yep, it's viable or it's not.
gotcha. I think for Mike, he wants to be able to see somewhat of a decent return into the future on this property. And so, and you can probably help with this, Robert, but I think just, to revitalize the 6, the 6 units is close to $1 million. And to add 3 additional on top of that, it's not exponentially more expensive since they're already there. They're already buying in bulk for things needed in the apartment building. So viable, I'm just speaking more financially, for him to feel like he can justify spending that kind of money on this property. At 6, his rate of return is, in his lifetime, he'll never see that money back, and so he probably would just punt on the idea at that point and let the city demolish it.
Do you know if he had insurance on it?
I do. He did not. He's always self-insured, right, wrong, or indifferent, and I think it's always worked out okay for him. This is not ideal, but he does have the financial means to complete the project.
Will or Justin, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Thank you for asking. I don't.
Okay. Justin?
I have no questions either.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from commissioners present? Okay. Thank you very much. Is there any, can you be sure to sign into the white sheet there? Thank you so much. Is there anyone in the audience tonight who is in favor of this item and would like to speak? Okay. Is there anyone opposed who would like to speak? Yes, you may come forward. You have 5 minutes. Please state your name and address.
Hello, my name is Kathy Hellstern. My address is 803 Hickman Road. I am currently the president of the Riverbend Neighborhood Association, and I am here to speak on their behalf. First of all, thank you for allowing us to provide input on this decision. We do take our obligation to our members and our neighbors and our historic neighborhood very seriously, as you can tell by us driving through the snow to be here. While we are pleased to see something possibly happening with this building, it is the majority opinion of the Riverbend Neighborhood Association Board that the current land use designation of 1726 Oakland Avenue is appropriate for the property and the structure. Low to medium density is a reasonable amount of density for a building that is designed for multifamily use on a street that already contains other multifamily structures. We have seen in our neighborhood how reducing density, not increasing density, has been imperative to the health and recovery of our neighborhood. For that reason, we are not in favor of increasing the land use designation to a high density. In this case, we do not feel that going against the carefully crafted planned DSM strategy is in the best interest of Riverbend. While our metro is definitely in need of affordable, safe, livable housing options, our feeling is that packing more people into existing structures is only beneficial to the landlords and the property owners, not to the people who are packed into the buildings or the neighbors living in arbitrarily dense areas so that somebody can make more money per square foot. Please do not make the neighborhood bear the burden of decisions made by property owners. Please do not leave the neighborhood with a permanently more dense piece of land. Please do not increase the density designation of this property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for signing into the sheet. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Yes, you may come forward. You have 5 minutes, and please state your name and address.
Hi, thank you. I am Dave Hellstern. I live at 803 Hickman Road. I am a board member of the Des Moines Historical Society. I'm also a board member of Home Inc. That's right in Riverbend. So we were here early, meetings ago on 1900 Arlington, and we fought that because of the density. And we're here tonight again to fight against more density. It's against the Des Moines plan. It's against the Riverbend's plan. The whole plan has been to reduce density. So sticking 3 more apartments in a basement of a place that had a fire in 2018 does not seem like a good idea. And increasing density in this location is a bad idea. You've got the overhead map on, the overhead. Let me show you, or let me tell you about, to the north of that property, 1802, that's 8 units. 1812, above that, is 8 units owned by Polk County. 1814 is a single family, and then 1820 above that is 5 units. To the south, 1728, that's a single family home. Below that, at 1710, that's 11 units, 10 plus the one in the back. 1700 has 4 units. So just on the west side of the street, there's 44 housing units in 2 blocks. That is way too dense. So you these people asking for 3 more units right there in an already heavily dense area is not, should not be accepted. And it really makes me kind of mad that there was the fire, it was in 2018, not 2019. They haven't done much, if anything, with it in 6 years. Now the city wants to tear it down and they want to try to actually save it. They could have sold it. They could have done something with it. They haven't. Now, because the city's threatening to tear it down, now they're finally doing something. I feel bad that the owner passed away, but that means if they can't make it viable with 6 units, then they should sell it. At 1900 Arlington, you denied it, or the city council denied increasing the density there. It's now for sale. This will bring it to somebody that will be able to fix it up and use it. There are not spaces right now for 9 parking spaces behind it, so they would have to increase that parking lot behind it. And it just, for it to be empty since 2018, since that fire, and now they want a reasonable rate of return, makes me even angrier, because they could have done something with it and started getting rent for the last 6 years. So I don't think that should be given any weight either. They can either figure out how to make it work with 6 units, get the historical tax credits. That's a great idea. Do something. If it changed hands, I'm sure the city would probably give them more time, whoever the new owner is, to try to do something with the property. But at this point, I would ask that you please deny this density increase. Thank you.
I got two follow-ups. It sounds like your argument is sort of identifying that 9 is actually normal for that area. And number 2, if fire is a risk, the higher density actually would require sprinklers, which would make the building safer because you now have sprinklers required when you don't at 6. So 6 would be more dangerous from a fire perspective and low density relative to those around it.
Okay.
Why that seems like you're arguing for the applicant.
Well, let me address your first issue. That building is way smaller than the buildings around it that have more units in it. So that one has 6 units. It was built for 6 units in a basement. And for you to try to cram 3 more units in the basement is going to make it more of a fire hazard. How are you going to get, they say they've got the approved egress. I haven't seen it, but that building was not meant to have 3 apartments in the basement and be able to have people get out. The upstairs units all have outside stairways that the people can get out of very easily. And then to address your issue about the sprinklers, whoever's going to fix it up is going to have to make it safe and pursuant to the code. If the code doesn't require sprinklers, I have no control over that. But just to put 3 more units in the basement just so it requires sprinklers so that it's more expensive, I don't want that. I don't think that's a good idea. That doesn't help them with their viable rate of return to have to put a sprinkler system in. And I don't think that most of those other units around have sprinkler systems. So your argument about sprinkler systems, I don't feel has any merit.
I want to weigh in on the sprinklers, and any of the other architects or on the commission can help me remember, but I don't know off the top of my head if we're talking about sprinklers correctly. I don't think that we are, probably. I don't think there's a magic number there that we are in possession of now, so I think we probably ought to table it. I mean, more than likely, the change of occupancy and the fact that it will become a residential occupancy would require some type of sprinkler, but I don't think we know that for sure right now. So I don't think this should be a point of debate. My 2 cents.
Thank you, Andy. And thank you. Be sure to sign in on the sheet. If there's anyone else who would like to speak against this item, you may come forward now. Yeah, you will have a rebuttal. I just need to check for anyone else who wanted to speak. Doesn't look like there's anyone else, so the applicant, you have 5 minutes for a rebuttal.
Yeah, thank you for your guys' input. I certainly understand that it doesn't appear to be, from their vantage point, ideal for the neighborhood. It's not an ideal situation, and it is not a perfect world. It's an unfortunate series of events that kind of brought us here. I'm just here representing a friend and a client of mine, trying to help make sure that this thing gets revitalized for the city of Des Moines. I'm a huge fan of the city. I'm on the Avenues board, and I want to see things done right, and especially historic properties. I want to see them revitalized. If it didn't get approved, yeah, it would be great if he could sell it to somebody who would step in and do it. I don't think, financial viability to be able to have a decent cash flow on this, it's important and you can't take property. I don't think that Mike will move forward with the 6 because the financials are so terrible. Part of it is the unfortunate process that he went through. I've seen the checks he's written for $225,000 into this property already. That's not anybody's fault, but it's just the reality of the situation, and that's where he's at. He probably shouldn't have done that. He suffered from a stroke a handful of years ago that he's trying to been working through, and I think kind of got taken advantage of in this situation. So none of that's ideal, but we are where we are, and I just want to see the property revitalized. Tax revenue for the city, done tastefully, done right. Egress windows, for obviously it's part of the code, and if it doesn't happen, and if you can't go down the historic tax credit road, and that property just continues to sit as a blighted property that ultimately will end up getting demolished, and now you just have this vacant property in the neighborhood. I'm guessing would be the least of ideal scenarios, which is probably the most likely if it doesn't get approved for the additional occupancy. So just kind of my 2 cents on that. Again, I'm here advocating for it. It's not my property, but just trying to advocate for what I think is best, and trying to help Mike out and I think the city a little bit in this scenario.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I will now close the public hearing and open it up to the commission for discussion and motions.
I'm going to float this. I would like to move staff.
Okay. Before we take a vote, is there any commissioners who would like to discuss this further? Will or Justin, do you have any items for discussion?
I just want to make sure that I go.
All those against? Okay. Will, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Okay. Justin, how do you vote?
Vote to support staff.
Did he say to support of staff? Okay, so yes for the motion. Okay, thank you very much.
Motion carried.
Okay. We will now move on to item number 9, a request from Hawkeye Tack and Western Supply for review and approval of a public hearing site plan, International Reformed Holy Spirit Church in America building renovation for property located at 720 East 30th Street, and for a Type 2 design alternative to allow 2 driveways off the primary street where 1 driveway off each non-primary street is allowed per city code. And Shauna from staff will present.
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Shauna Barron, planning staff for the City of Des Moines. Item 9 is for the church located at 720 East 30th Street. Here is the subject property. It's located on the west side of East 30th, directly across from the fairgrounds. Some site photos here show the property in the fall, and then one taken yesterday, looking north from the corner of Lion Street and East 30th. You can see the 2 driveways that are existing on the East 30th corridor. Additionally, there are 2 driveways driveway accesses to the non-primary streets to the north and south, one to Maple to the north, and then Lion Street to the south. The site plan here is the applicant's request to retain all 4 drive accesses, the 2 on East 30th as well as the 2 on the non-primary street. This site plan was submitted following an approved site plan showing the code compliant 2 access points on the non-primary streets. So this site plan was approved in January of ¡23, showing the East 30th drives closed and the remaining non-primary street access points retained. A conditional use approval was granted in January of '22, contingent upon submittal of a site plan for the change of use from retail to a church. The site plan was formally submitted to the city in late October of '22, following a citizen complaint, notices of violation, and then referral to city legal. The site plan was then approved in January of '23, showing these drive accesses as allowed by code. 8 months later, the applicant came back to us and requested to retain all 4 drive accesses, and this is the plan that is before you today. This amended plan does show, as proposed, it creates some internal circulation issues with the addition of parking in this drive aisle, if you can see where my cursor is here. Limited site work did begin on the subject property following the amended plan submittal. That was in an attempt to stay the trial that was scheduled for December 4th of '23. The court did order all violations to be corrected by June 1 of '24. The trial did not happen. They entered into that agreement. So East 30th is a truck route. It's also a minor arterial. It carries nearly 11,000 vehicles per day. It has been identified as a high injury network street per the Vision Zero Transportation Safety Action Plan, and city staff believes that corridor access management is a proven safety countermeasure to reduce crashes and enhance safety. It is paramount along the East 30th corridor. Staff feels that the change of use as a compliance trigger not only warrants bringing the site up to current code standards, but it is also an opportunity to improve the safety of pedestrians along this corridor by reducing these conflict points, such as these 2 private driveways off of East 30th Street across from a pedestrian-heavy fairground area. Therefore, staff is not supportive of the site plan for the subject property, retaining all 4 driveways. John Davis is a senior traffic engineer with the city. He is here also to address any questions you might have about the safety impact of closing the 2 driveways will have on that corridor. We did not receive any public comments on this project. And I'll open it up for any questions that the commission might have.
A question on East 30th Street. Are there any plans from the city to change it from a 4-lane to another configuration, such as a 3-lane with a center turn lane in the future?
John, do you want to offer any comments on that?
Good evening, John Davis, City Traffic Engineer. At this time, we do not have any plans to do that. It's not programmed in our CIP. Based on our Transportation Master Plan, Move DSM, as well as the Vision Zero Safety Action Plan, this street potentially could be a candidate for it. It does unfortunately meet the conditions or the characteristics of being a 4-lane undivided road. And we've seen historically that is where the bulk of our crashes are occurring, especially for vulnerable users. Keeping in mind that the state fairgrounds are across the street on the east side, there's a lot of traffic during state fair, a lot of pedestrian traffic, and that would also be a contributing factor. But at present, we do not have any plans in this regard.
Johnny?
Yes, I have a question for staff. It sounds like the city had a pre-application meeting back in 2021. I'm assuming at that point in time, the applicant was informed about the changes that were needed
Correct.
to those driveways.
Correct.
So we are here a couple of years later and playing a little bit of bait and switch with the site plans, getting a site plan approved, violations, resubmitting a site plan. Is that an accurate description?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any more questions for staff? Will or Justin, do you have any questions for staff?
Not at this moment.
Okay, all right.
Will doesn't have any questions either, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Shauna.
Thank you.
Is the applicant here to present tonight? No, the applicant is not here to present tonight?
I'll speak for them.
Okay.
Matt Palin, Cambridge, Iowa. So I actually worked with them to do this site plan. So originally we had talked about, like the bait and switch that you had talked about. I had talked about with them, but I think they're getting more people coming to this site than there were their other place that they were worshiping at. So there's an increased volume here that they weren't expecting, is why we'd like to keep these two drives open. But I guess I have a question also about what's the increase in accidents that happen here during the fair because these two are open versus the rest of the year. I mean, it's 2 weeks a year. And I'm not sure that on Sunday or when their worship time is a high volume traffic time that they're going to be leaving here either. So that may not be as big of a concern as I'm hearing people talk about it.
How does this change in configuration impact the number of spaces available? Because if we're saying that we want more people to be able to access the site, it looks like this configuration has less parking, which is going to end up with more people on the street than the other configuration.
In the previous configuration, the middle island was much bigger, and so this row along the south of that middle, in this plan south, was not there before. So you're looking at taking away taking away 5 spaces for the 2 drives, but we're adding about 10 or 12 spaces for that row along the bottom of that center row.
So if we actually took the drives away and added those spaces back and still allowed that middle aisle, it seems like that's getting where you're looking to go while still providing the safety of the closed street. Is that a fair solution? So close the driveways and let them be...
It's still a couple more, but yes, yeah.
I was going to, does the commission want us to flip back and forth between this slide and this slide with the...
I would like to see the previous one, but
approved
do we have a total number of parking spots on each site plan?
I'm sure we do. If you just give us a second, we'll...
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. If you know the answer, go ahead and tell us.
I don't know. I'd have to look at that print to see.
We'll look at that, and while we're doing that, we'll flip back and forth.
So, just to be clear, the objection to this previous approved site plan was the number of parking spaces or the way that the cars move through the site?
I think it's a little bit of both.
So you have 57 on this one. In the upper right corner, you can see, what's the other one?
The notes might not be, maybe didn't get updated.
Yeah, they didn't, because there's an
This
X
print
through
doesn't
that.
have that updated yet. Do you have an updated print?
We didn't receive one yet.
Okay.
That was one of my comments for, as we went through our resubmittals, but I believe the updated plan does have 64 spaces with the addition of these here. But we felt that that caused issue with the traffic flow or the circulation pattern throughout the site. And the amount of parking that's here is largely over what is allowed for a church use, so we didn't feel that the extra parking was necessary for the church use.
Can you tell us what is allowed for church use?
1 space per 6 seats.
How many seats does this church have?
That I don't know.
It's over 300.
This says 200 seats,
So 34
So 34.
so 34 spaces would be required.
is the minimum required.
Yep, and there were 57 on the previous plan and then 64 proposed here.
Do we have parking maximums? I thought we only have minimums.
We don't have maximums. In the downtown, we have some maximums, but in an outer setting like this, we don't.
Okay. Any more questions for the applicant? Or the applicant's representative? Will or Justin, do you have any questions for the applicant's representative?
No, thank you.
Okay.
None at this moment.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak in support of this item? You may come forward. Anyone who would like to speak against the item? Seeing none, I will. Okay. If there's no one else who would like to speak, I'm going to close the public hearing and open it up to the commission for discussion and motions.
A few months ago, I think we had a similar item that was on, maybe it was on Merle Hay, where, and I don't remember exactly how that all played out, but I think council ended up allowing them to keep their curb cuts. And this may be, that may be the path for this, where we support the staff recommendation, acknowledge that there's been some issues with compliance, and then if they want to go to the elected officials for relief, that's probably a more appropriate avenue, in my opinion.
Any further discussion from commissioners?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. So what you're saying is that we're advocating for doing what was previously agreed, which is closing the curb cuts. And you're saying if someone has a problem with that, they should have council overturn that. But in the past, we've said here, and it's been previously agreed, that closing 30th is an agreeable right outcome. It sounds like there is a challenge as to whether or not the parking configuration in this closed one cannot be made, more efficient for higher use. So I guess it seems like if we blend the two, where the middle aisle has provided access to be reevaluated for increasing density of parking, but not compromising on the closing of 30th, sounds like a reasonable middle ground.
I don't know if I follow that.
What I'm saying is close 30th, the middle drive aisle allowed to be reevaluated if parking is the driver. If we're saying that we just want more ways to get in and out quicker because we have more people on the lot, I guess then we're into the discussions of safety and everything else, and we're going back on what we agreed to earlier with respect to what we all agreed to would be a safe outcome.
So, Chris, am I understanding that you are advocating for those curb cuts to be filled in on 30th, but to revisit the parking configuration in the original site plan that was approved?
Correct.
Okay.
It's conceivable the applicant could make changes that don't require design alternative from the commission. So, yeah, we can look at an amendment that possibly could be approved administratively that might pick up more spaces. I think that's how I'm taking your comments, and that's totally possible. You're just being asked about the driveways tonight.
So I'm saying it sounds like a number of people believe that the driveways should be in line with what was previously agreed, which is the driveways should be closed up. Yet we're saying staff is amenable to re-looking at the parking configuration separately, and that's a separate issue? Is that what we're saying?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
In this case, I would move staff.
Okay. We have a motion. Todd did. Will or Justin, did you have any discussion before we vote on the motion?
Thanks, no.
So moving staff will not preclude re-looking at the configuration.
Yeah, they can submit, the only reason this amendment is here is because of the two driveway, but, I mean, anybody can submit a site plan amendment, and we can look at that. It only comes before the commission if they happen to need a design alternative. So your action doesn't preclude them from amending their site plan in a manner that would comply with code, but possibly is more, maybe finds a more creative solution to add more parking.
All right, the motion on the floor is to move staff. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Will, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye, I think.
Yes,
Yes.
that's a yes.
Justin, how do you vote?
With staff.
Okay, move staff?
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much.
Motion carried.
Motion carried. That is the end of our public hearing. We will move on to other items. We have an election of officers that we will be voting on, starting with the next Planning and Zoning meeting. We have the chair will be Johnny Elsevar, vice chair will be Leo Rudolphi, and the second vice chair will be Kayla Berkson. Can I get a motion from a commissioner to approve this slate of candidates?
So moved.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Will, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Justin, how do you vote?
Yes, as well.
Thank you. So the election of officers passes. Do we have any committees or directors' reports?
Not at this time.
Okay.
So can we thank you for your service very much,
Yes.
and congratulations to the new officers.
Yes, thank you, and thank you to the committee, the nominating committee, who chose the officers. Thank you very much.
Maybe congratulations on surviving the year.
Yes. And hopefully we all get home safely. All right, thank you.